Gary?
Yep.
Good to go?
Yep.
Okay. The Wednesday, May 10th, 2023 regular meeting of the Gardner City Council Finance Committee will come to order. The clerk will please call the roll.
President Kazinskas.
Present.
Councilor Ron Cormier.
Present.
And Councilor Denalowitz.
Present.
Okay. Is anyone here recording the meeting? Okay. We will begin with the acceptance correction of the minutes of prior meetings of the April 18th, 2023 meeting.
Motion to accept the minutes as presented and waive the reading.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Cormier, seconded by Councilor Denalowitz to accept the minutes as presented and waive the reading of the minutes. Is there discussion on the motion? The clerk will please call the roll.
President Kazinskas.
Yes.
Councilor Ron Cormier.
Yes.
And Councilor Denalowitz.
Yes.
3 yeas, the motion passes. Item 10977, an order appropriating $99,000 from free cash to the Personnel Employee Benefits Account Workers' Compensation Audit. Mr. Mayor?
Thank you very much, Madam President. We have begun to close out the fiscal 2023 fiscal year. As part of that, we're going through and seeing what accounts are currently in the red, and as we do every year, closing those out with free cash. John can talk a little bit about this one, but our workers' comp audit is one that we kind of take a guess on every year because we just never know what we're going to get hit with during the year in terms of workers' compensation claims and things of that nature. So we do audit that account every year as required by statute. So the requested $99,000 would be to bring that account back up to the red and close it out for the fiscal year. Bring it back up to the black, and close it out for the fiscal year.
Auditor Richard, if you want to come up if you have anything else to add?
So basically, in the beginning of the year, we give the workers' comp company our covered payroll, and at the end of the year, they do an audit and stuff like that. So basically, the last 2 years, they did an audit, and I wasn't comfortable with one of them. It's because I don't know where the heck they were using their numbers. So it took, this is why it took a little while. It's basically 2 years of audits that they had to do. It was FY21 is the one that I was questioning, and basically I'm glad I did because it saved us about $18,000. On the following audit, they did it correctly. Wasn't happy, but they did it correctly on that one, and it was some, it was extra money also. So the $99,000 is basically covering the audit fees.
Is this covered for 2 years then, basically? Or?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Thank you.
Can I ask a question?
Sure.
As soon as I make a note. Do we appropriate any money? Do we have a line item for this initially?
Yep, we do. It basically, the initial, I think it was $230,000 for workers' comp.
Okay. So I'm having a little trouble getting my head around this, but this is an audit cost.
Well, it's not an audit cost. They audit it and they basically look to see, okay, what's your covered payroll, what's your actual payroll, and this is basically.
So it's more of an adjustment in
Yeah.
what we owe into the workman's comp.
Exactly,
Yes.
exactly, because they have, they look at what category each worker is in, and is some formula. There's a lot involved. They look at our mod rate. If we have high claims, it goes against us, stuff like that. So there's a lot of variables going into that. But yeah, this is more of an adjustment.
Yeah, it just didn't seem,
Yep.
the figure didn't even
Yeah.
make sense to when we talk about a regular audit.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
exactly.
what I'm
Yeah.
visualizing.
Yeah.
All right.
Further questions, comments from the committee?
I'll make a motion that we recommend passage by the full council.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Cormier, seconded by Councilor Denalowitz to recommend passage by the full council. Is there discussion on the motion? The clerk will please call the roll.
President Kazinskas.
Present? Yes.
Councilor Ron Cormier.
Yes.
And Councilor Denalowitz.
Yes.
3 yeas, the motion passes. Thank you, Auditor Richard. Item 978, in order appropriating $701,700 from free cash to the DPW snow and ice removal expense account. This is something that we typically entertain this time of year. We don't know how long winter's gonna take, but upon your
1978, we had snow on May 11th.
upon your submission of this, Mr. Mayor, and I assume you're declaring that winter is over, so
Yes.
go ahead.
This year, we spent a total of $1,02,174.64. So 1,002,174.64 on snow and ice removal. The majority of that came at the cost of purchasing salt, more than it was really labor for plowing, because we had a lot more ice instances than snow instances this year. So we had to send the salters out a lot more than normal this year. We do budget some of this in the annual operating budget, but that we budget $300,000 in that per Massachusetts regulations. Whatever you budget in snow and ice in one year, you have to budget an equivalent amount of that in the following fiscal year. So that's why we purposely underball that, because we are allowed to deficit spend in that account, because you just never know what's gonna come out of the sky each and every year. And rather than tie up funds in an account that we're not sure whether that money is gonna be spent or not there, we purposely kind of stick with that $300,000 number to at least get us started for the season and then see what happens throughout the year. So the request that's in front of you for the $700,000 and change is what we are currently in deficit for the fiscal year to, again, bring us back up to the black in that account. This
Did we
is
appropriate any other funds at any point besides the original budget at all?
not for snow and ice.
This a new record? A dubious distinction if it is.
Yes, it is.
One prior, I think it was 700,000 total.
So we beat it by 1,000. This is an account that statutorily we are able to amortize if we don't fill it with free cash at the end of the year and have to pay it off within a 3-year period like a loan. However, where we have the free cash on hand, I'd rather just have us clean up our books now while we can, rather than carry it over for a period of 3 years.
Well, that would be very illogical in my thinking. I mean, we're gonna get hammered again maybe probably next year. We'd just be further in the hole.
Exactly.
Right, this makes no sense.
Question, comments from the committee?
I make a motion, we recommend passage to the full council.
Second,
Motion made by Counselor Derlot, seconded by Counselor Cormier to recommend passage to the full council. Is there discussion on the motion? The clerk will please call the roll.
President Kazinskas?
Yes.
Counselor Armando Cormier?
yes.
Counselor Delawitz?
Yes.
3 yeas, the motion passes. Item 10979, in order appropriating $10,000 from free cash to the Treasury Department Professional Services Tax Title Foreclosure. This is something that we've been talking about a lot over the last couple of years, and, you know, City Council, as the city continues to go after properties on our tax title foreclosure list that you've put together with the city, so go ahead.
This is something, again, that we budget $35,000 for annually in the operating budget. However, it costs us about $8,500 per property that we send through the tax court. So where we've taken a more aggressive stance on trying to get those properties back on the tax rolls and sell them back out, as I notified the council in the notification I sent at the last council meeting. This is just something that we're trying to recoup the funding that we've done. So we went over about $10,000 in that account, so trying to just close us out for the end of the fiscal year. That really results to about a property and a half in closing fees and legal filing fees for those properties.
Thank you.
But again, we sold them for, I think the cheapest one we sold was $20,000. So we've made it back out in revenue, we just have to transfer the funding in, and it'll fall to free cash at the end of the fiscal.
Make it in revenue, we can't necessarily pay for it that way, so we have to move everything over.
Correct, yes.
How much did we budget initially?
35,000.
Questions, comments from the committee?
Make a motion that we recommend.
Make the motion.
Second.
Second.
Okay, I'm gonna pick. Motion made by Counselor Cormier, seconded by Counselor Denalowitz to recommend passage to the full council. Is there discussion on the motion? All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. I'm sorry, the clerk will please call the roll.
Roll call.
President Kazinskas?
Yes.
Counselor Armando Cormier?
Yes.
And Counselor Delawitz?
Yes.
3 yeas, the motion passes. Item 10980, an order appropriating $3,312 from free cash to law department outside counsel expense account. Mayor Nicholson?
Thank you, Madam President. We budget $5,000 annually for this account. There are currently four cases that would be covered under this account. One is a zoning appeal, one is an appeal of a decision by the fire department that's also being appealed that was approved by the fire marshal, and now that's before administrative appeal. So we had to get outside counsel on that one. And then there is an additional zoning matter that relates to a triple-decker property and the valuation at which that property is at since it lost its grandfathering for zoning, and then another administrative appeal as well. So these are all regarding animals on a property per the zoning code. So these are mainly zoning appeals and then that fire appeal that's there for those 4 cases. This should get us through the end of the year fine with what we anticipate for those cases.
Thank you. Questions, comments from the committee?
I make a motion, we recommend passes to the full council.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor Donalawitz, seconded by Councilor Cormier to recommend passage to the full council. Is there a discussion on the motion? Clerk will please call the roll.
President Kazinskas,
Present, yes.
Councilor Ron Cormier,
Yes.
and Councilor Donalawitz.
Yes.
3 yeas, the motion passes. Item 10981, an order appropriating $500 from free cash to law department deposition and discovery expense account. Mayor Nicholson?
Thank you, Madam President. We budget $500 for this annually. This came up as a result of one of the lawsuits that the city is currently in. We don't anticipate any further depositions before the end of the year. Therefore, this should close us out based on expenses that we've already incurred, not any that we are planning for the remainder of the fiscal year.
Motion to recommend passage then.
Second?
Motion made by Councilor Cormier, seconded by Councilor Donalawitz to recommend passage to the full council. Is there discussion on the motion? The clerk will please call the roll.
President Kazinskas,
Yes?
Councilor Ron Cormier,
Yes.
and Councilor Donalawitz.
Yes.
3 yeas, the motion passes. Item 10982, an order appropriating $879 from free cash to law department deposition discovery expense account, An order appropriating $879 from free cash to law department professional development and travel account. Mayor Nicholson?
Thank you, Madam President. We budget $1,000 for this annually. This is overage due to training that we had to do for the new assistant solicitor. Lawyers are required to take annual continuing legal education classes, and there was one that was related to the work being done as our city solicitor and law department. So that's where this was incurred from. This should close us out. We don't anticipate any further costs for the end of the fiscal year.
So this was required training?
Yes.
But sort of, I won't say exclusively, but more in line with the duties of city solicitor as opposed
Yes.
to being.
Correct.
All right, I'll make a motion that we recommend.
Second?
Motion made by Councilor Cormier, seconded by Councilor Donalawitz to recommend passage to the full council. Is there discussion on the motion? The clerk will please call the roll.
President Kazinskas,
Yes.
Councilor Ron Cormier,
Yes.
and Councilor Donalawitz.
Yes.
3 yeas, the motion passes. Item 10983, an order appropriating $15,000 from free cash to personnel department medical exam expense account. This is also something we typically see this time of the year, regarding, depending on how many people are hired within the city and what turnovers like and different positions created. Go ahead, Mayor Nicholson.
Thank you, Madam President. That's exactly it. We budget $20,000 for this annually in the operating budget. We hired 166 employees during the last fiscal year. 10 of those new hires have not been billed for yet, so this is covering the cost that we anticipate. Those physicals and drug tests will come in at the end of the year. This does include those individuals who were hired as part of the police department or the fire department. Those have a higher exam price where we have about $150 per regular
I'm sorry, you
employee.
said it does include them?
Yes.
Okay.
It's about $150 per non-fire or police employee. It is $800 for fire and police employee. That number is set by the Civil Service Commission because it includes a physical fitness test and a psychological test on top of the regular physical and drug test. So those have to be administered by the Civil Service Commission. So therefore, we have to pay them whatever price they set for it, $800 per employee. We had 6 employees hired at the police department this year, and I believe 7 at the fire department, but I will get a firm number on those. But definitely for sure, definitely for sure, 6 at the police department and 7 for the fire department. So those numbers are included in here. So this is what we anticipate to get us through the end of the fiscal year.
Thank you. Questions, comments from the committee?
Well, my questions were gonna be how much per individual, and you covered that.
Okay.
About 166.
Yeah, that does include school department employees.
Yeah, I understand. One larger number than I would have thought.
Yeah.
I make a motion, we recommend passage to the full council.
Second,
Motion made by Counselor Donalao, seconded by Counselor Cormier to recommend passage to the full council. Is there discussion on the motion? The clerk will please call the roll.
President Kazinskas?
Yes.
Counselor Armand Cormier?
yes.
And Counselor Donalawitz?
Yes.
3 yeas, the motion passes. Item 10984, an order appropriating $45,000 from free cash to mayor's unclassified energy and utilities account, Waterford Street School and Prospect Street School. Mayor Nicholson?
Thank you, Madam President. We budget $36,000 for this in the operating budget due to the inflation-related cost increases with electricity and gas. These are both gas boilers in these buildings. This is the cost of basically what we had to do to heat the buildings in the wintertime. We are looking at, we just finished the sale for Prospect Street School, so that will not be a recurring issue, and we are looking at different ways that we can cover the cost, bless you, of the Waterford Street School building with the eventual lease of that building to the new tenants, bless you.
Bless you.
And then potential solar panels on the roof to alleviate some of the electricity costs with that.
That's
There's-
on Waterford, I'm sorry.
on Waterford Street School, yes, again, because we're selling Prospect Street School.
Mr. Mayor,
Yep.
you're a little distant. With the Waterford Street property, you were talking about the lease, is that what you were saying, and that it may be passing that over as well?
In the future, I'm saying these costs will be covered by the leasees of that property. This is kind of something
Yeah.
that we have to do this year just because we haven't entered into those yet. And then the solar panels that we're looking at getting on the roof of Waterford will help eat some of those electricity costs that the city would have to pay too that aren't covered by those the share of those that would not be covered by the leases, because we would have the senior center and some other city uses of that facility still too. So we wouldn't be able to pass the whole buck off.
The shared use, right? There's
Yes.
some city entities, some non-city, non-profit entities as well.
Yes, and I, this morning submitted a correspondence to the clerk that'll go to the council at the next one. I just signed the new municipal aggregation rates contract for the city for the next 3 years, and those will go down from 24 cents per kilowatt hour to 13 cents per kilowatt hour. So we'll see a reduction in just general spending that way as well.
Good that we only did 1 year.
Exactly, yes, that 1 year contract helped us.
All right, I make a motion that we recommend passage to the full council.
Second?
Motion made by Counselor Cormier, seconded by Counselor Donalao to recommend passage to the full council. Is there discussion on the motion? The clerk will please call the roll.
President Kazinskas?
Yes.
Counselor Armand Cormier?
Yes,
And Counselor Donalawitz?
Yes.
3 yeas, the motion passes. Item 10985, an order appropriating $25,000 from free cash to mayor's unclassified S. Graves versus city lawsuit account. Mayor Nicholson?
Thank you, Madam President. This is a ongoing litigation issue that the city has had. This is a appeal of both a city's decision on a public records request and that was upheld by the Secretary of State's Open Government Division. The plaintiff in this case is suing both the Commonwealth and the city in this matter. We have had some appropriations moving forward to fund this lawsuit. To date, the city has expended $54,878.22 on this lawsuit. This appropriation would cover what was above, what was above already that was appropriated. We've had about $20,000 appropriated, so this would make up the difference in expenses that have been occurred as a result of this lawsuit. We are working with the Attorney General's office on this, and we expect them to take a more prominent role in the case. It's just the individual did not serve the Commonwealth as early as he served the city in this matter, so the city had to cover 100% of the costs up front for the first couple of months of this lawsuit until the Commonwealth was finally served with the process.
So would be reimbursed?
Probably not, because it was only the city defending the city at that point.
Okay.
from that point on.
It's a cost sharing at that point.
And so this $25,000 is included in the 54?
Yes.
And it's not done yet.
That was a yes, Mr. Mayor, correct, right? That's what I'm understanding.
Was that?
That was a yes.
That was a yes, yes.
Can't just shake your head.
Okay.
You
Yeah, I
can't see him
realized that
shaking his head, Counselor?
I can, I'm there.
I'll make a motion reluctantly that we, recommend.
Second?
Motion made by Counselor Cormier, seconded by Counselor Dirnallowitz to recommend passage to the full council. Is there discussion on the motion? The clerk will please call the roll.
President Kazinskas,
Yes.
Councilor Ron Cormier,
Yes.
Councilor Dirnallowitz.
Yes.
3 yeas, the motion passes. Item 10986, an order appropriating $10,000 from free cash to City Hall maintenance, repairs, and maintenance account. Mayor Nicholson?
Thank you, Madam President. We budget $25,000 in this account annually. This is covering the cost of a repair to the elevator in City Hall that needed to be done this past fiscal year and the required annual inspection of the elevator that needed to be done where those issues were noticed. To begin with, this should bring us into the black for the remainder of the fiscal year.
Questions, comments from the committee?
Make a motion, we recommend passage to the full council.
Second.
Motion made by Counselor Dirnallowitz, seconded by Counselor Cormier to recommend passage to the full council. Is there discussion on the motion? The clerk will please call the roll.
President Kazinskas.
Yes.
Councilor Ron Cormier.
Yes.
And Councilor Dirnallowitz.
Yes.
3 yeas, the motion passes. Item 10987, an order appropriating $25,000 from free cash to DPW streetlights expense account. Mayor Nicholson?
Thank you, Madam President. I'm going to start off by saying we budget $100,000 for this account annually. However, I do want to go into a little more detail with this one because this has been something that's kind of stuck in my craw since I've been elected. We've had issues with our streetlights, with our workings with National Grid for a little bit of time. If you remember back around the rotaries, around Pearson Boulevard and Timpani Boulevard, back when I first took office, none of those worked. I had a meeting with DOT and National Grid. They were pointing at each other for the matter. National Grid was saying that when DOT reconstructed the rotaries, they cut some of the wires. DOT was saying that they didn't even dig near those. In the end, I asked them to just go change the light bulbs, and all of a sudden, all the lights worked, but no one bothered to check to see if the light bulbs had burnt out. This is a similar situation of a not doing enough due diligence, I feel like, on my end, with National Grid. Basically what happened is in 2019, the city converted all of our streetlights to LEDs rather than incandescent bulbs. And that resulted in an electrical savings that we were expecting because LEDs use less electricity than incandescent bulbs do. However, National Grid charges a lower rate for LED bulbs than they do for incandescent bulbs. That rate was never changed on the city's end. So since 2019, National Grid has been overbilling the city at an incandescent rate, even though we're using LEDs. And this wasn't noticed until last year because the bills said LED rate, and it wasn't until City Engineer Rob Oliva looked at the numbers on the bills to be like, wait a second, while it says LED rate, that is not the listed LED rate. So we are now in discussions with the Department of Public Utilities and National Grid to rectify this to see if the city can get a credit going back a certain number of years. Statutorily, we can only go back a certain number of years, but we believe we're still in that window. And I'm expecting an eventual credit of about $200,000 for what the city was overbilled for these light bulbs. However, at the direction of the Department of Public Utilities, we are still required to pay these bills until that credit is finalized. So this should get us for the end of the fiscal year in paying those bills that I hope eventually this $25,000 comes back to us in that credit. However, we've been told that we have to pay this bill until everything is finalized and a final agreement is signed between the city and National Grid. Because basically what happens now is National Grid has to go and get an accurate accounting and GPS longitude and latitude coordinate location of every pole in the city that has a street light on it, and then determine how much was billed for that individual pole and go back and backdate those credits per each pole. So right now they're in the process of updating their database that had not been updated in at least 15 years of all the coordinates of all of the poles within the city of Gardner, and then we'll see that credit after they're done doing all of that back work.
And not to be cynical, but I wouldn't think they'd consider this a priority.
I would agree. This is something I raised to their attention last September.
Yeah, National Grid is the company we've learned to hate.
Yes.
Other questions, comments on the committee?
I'll make a motion to recommend passage.
Second?
Motion made by Counselor Cormier, seconded by Counselor Generalowitz to recommend passage to the full council. Is there discussion on the motion? I would just, like to say that I remember when this LED lights, these were installed, when that went over, because there were several lights that were then put up when I was a ward counselor for people who wanted lights, and the city did a great job of doing that. This is really unfortunate we have to go through this way, but I'm glad to see that we do have our due diligence. We did have city engineer all over it, and to be able to do that, and it being a National Grid issue and error, I hope that we see it rectified sooner than later.
Yes, it is something they are actively working on. We have been talking with Brandy, our contact with them, and her boss and her boss's boss on this matter. It's just something that when you go back to 2019 and have been overcharged since then, there's a lot of bookwork that needs to be done, and it's just going through bookwork.
Well, I'm glad that we have a good working relationship with them to be able to get it done at this point.
Yeah.
Further discussion?
Mr. Mayor, what is the statutory, what is the look back? Do you know the number of years, like 5 years or?
It's 5 years.
Further discussion? The clerk will please call the roll.
President Kazinskas?
Yes.
Counselor Arana Cormier?
Yes.
And Counselor Generalowitz?
Yes.
3 yeas, the motion passes. Item 10988, in order appropriating $32,000 from free cash to Greenwood Pool Filtration System expense account. Mayor Nicholson?
Thank you, Madam President. This was a free cash appropriation that we did in 2021 to purchase the filter. We had money in the budget then for what we anticipated the cost to be to install it. However, the filter did not arrive until October of last year, 2022. General inflation cost increased that with install and the wiring work needed to install that filter. The filter is actually the size of the shed over at the Greenwood Pool. If you drove by, it looks like a house. It's since been installed, and this was the cost over and above what was budgeted due to the inflation increases with the installation. The cost of the purchase was basically covered by the free cash appropriation that was done, and then a portion of the install, about $10,000 of the install was covered with that. This is what we're over in that account.
Thank you. Questions, comments from the committee?
Make a motion that we recommend passage.
Second?
Motion made by Counselor Cormier, seconded by Counselor Generalowitz to recommend passage to the full council. Is there discussion on the motion? The clerk will please call the roll.
President Kazinskas?
Yes.
Counselor Arana Cormier?
Yes.
And Counselor Generalowitz?
Yes.
3 yeas, the motion passes. Item 10989, in order appropriating $1,091 from free cash to Zoning Board of Appeals Communications account. Mayor Nicholson?
Thank you, Madam President. We annually budget $3,000 in this account. This is something that I would like to us, and I'm working with the staff once we get our new building commissioner starting on the 15th. Working with them to construct a plan similar to what the planning board does, where it's the proponents of each case that pay for the advertisement costs that are required statutorily for the newspaper, for abutters notices and things of that nature. Right now, the city is covering those costs for the Zoning Board of Appeals. So this is for the different statutorily required mailings and newspaper publications that are required for the different hearings that are done before the Zoning Board of Appeals. Like I said, moving forward, I'd like to see a system put in place like we have before the planning board and other different boards, where if someone is coming up, since it is their project that has to come before the committee, and we won't know what needs to come before the ZBA when we set the operating budget in June for what'll happen between the next 12 months after that, to see if that's something that we can pass off to the proponents in there, since it's really their onus to get that passed.
Right. Well, I agree with that, but in that case, I'll make a motion that we recommend passage.
Second?
Motion made by Counselor Cormier, seconded by Counselor Generalowitz to recommend passage to the full council. Is there discussion on the motion? The clerk will please call the roll.
President Kazinskas?
Yes.
Counselor Arana Cormier?
Yes.
And Counselor Generalowitz?
Yes.
3 yeas, the motion passes. Item 10990, in order appropriating $14,925 from free cash to the IT department City Hall copy machine account. Mayor Nicholson?
Thank you, Madam President. The current copy machine that's used by all departments here in City Hall is about a dozen years old. I put the actual age in the cover letter, I just don't have that in front of me at this time. This is something that's used on a daily basis multiple times for both scanning and printing purposes. Back when this was purchased, iPods were still a thing. Just like technology evolves on everything, so does it with copy machines, and we're starting now to see a lot more repairs that need to get made to this machine, because again, it's used daily at least hundreds of times, or at least with hundreds of sheets of paper daily, or scanning, or everything like that. So just looking to update that so we can increase the efficiencies within City Hall in those matters.
Questions, comments from the committee?
Is there any value with the one we still have? Is it like a trade-in value or anything, or is it just kind of a sunk cost?
I think it's a sunk cost at this point, just because of how many problems we've been having with it lately.
Okay.
Yeah,
Hopefully we can trade it and get.
Thank you.
yeah.
And is there a contract with the new one?
We have a contract with Xerox.
Okay,
For the current machine for maintenance, it's just we're using it more. Like Councilor Cormier just said, if we can have Xerox do something once we get the new one with the old machine and pass it off to a different department, we can certainly have it looked at for that matter, but right now we're just kind of looking at just getting a new one and moving on, just because we're at that point.
thank you.
It's gonna be like office space instead, most likely. Bringing out faxes and- I'll make a motion to recommend passage to the full council.
Second.
Motion made by Councilor General, seconded by Councilor Cormier to recommend passage to the full council. Is there discussion on the motion? The clerk will please call the roll.
President Kazinskas?
Yes?
Councilor Cormier?
Yes.
And Councilor Denalowitz?
Yes.
3 yeas, the motion passes. We have nothing under new business, and we're waiting for an opinion from City Solicitor Flick regarding the new business information that was brought up at the previous city council meeting. So at this time, I'm just gonna keep it to, there's nothing on the agenda, so there's nothing for new business, but I hope to rectify that and open it up so we can have some type of comments at the end of the meeting that's not listed on the agenda. So with that, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second?
Motion made by Councilor Cormier, seconded by Councilor Derналowitz to adjourn. The clerk will please call the roll.
President Kazinskas?
Yes?
Councilor Cormier?
Yes.
And Councilor Denalowitz?
Yes.
3 yeas, the motion passes. The meeting stands adjourned. Thank you, everyone.
Thank you.
Thanks, Darren.
Thanks for putting up with me